No, I've got it. No, can you circle the ones that? I'm trying to avoid Tony having to watch the tapes take minutes, but maybe it's unavoidable.
About what committees we're discussing tonight?
No, just the appointments. The ones that we actually appoint.
After
Pretty much
we're
all that
done?
needs to go on the minutes.
Okay.
So I'll second, I'll bring the meeting to order.
Sure. So here we are. Welcome. We are at the Town Council Appointments and Negotiation Committees meeting for Wednesday, January 11th, 2000, and I will check the agenda and put 2023. Okay, so first on the agenda is the attendance. I have myself, Counselor Karen Shu, we have Counselor Hamel and Counselor Clucci. And we have the approval of the minutes from the December 14th, 2022 meeting. Did everyone get a chance to review the minutes?
Yes,
Okay, did anyone have any concerns or questions or changes?
motion to approve.
Second,
All in favor? Okay, so we approve the minutes from December 14th. So item number 4 on our agenda tonight is to discuss some renewal applications and actions on various boards and committees. So as we'll note, we had a very successful year last year in December and filled a lot of our committees and a lot of spots, and we only have a couple more to fill, which is great. So first, we're going to talk about Community Services and Rec Advisory Board. We had a slew of really good applications. I know we've all looked at them because we've been looking at them for the last month or so. So I don't know if everyone's okay, I'm gonna go ahead and make a motion. And then we can have a discussion. So I will make a motion. So first, let's say on Community Services, we have 1 voting member and then we have 2 alternate positions that are available right now. So my motion right now would be for Community Services and Rec Advisory Board. I motion to make Alexander Marshall a full voting member. And then we would make William Partridge the first alternate, and then Amanda Doherty would be the second alternate on the Community Services and Rec Advisory Board. Who the second?
a second.
Any discussion? Like I said, I think we kind of looked at these applications before and we've whittled them down. And we've actually assigned other people to other committees since then. So,
Good talent.
yes.
We're fortunate to have a lot of interest in this committee. It's an important one.
It is, especially coming down here. I think, with the community survey and everyone wanting a community center and aquatic center and things like that, we really need to get this board to do some work. And I know they're motivated. That's where I came from. I've been on the board for the last year, so I'm excited. I think these are going to be some great additions.
I know they worked hard to combine those committees, a lot of energy went into that,
Yes,
and, worked with the chairs at the time, and also most of, several of the committee members, so it was a very thorough and participative process, and I think there was a lot of thought given to how to put the two together and how to accommodate, people falling into different roles on the newly combined committee, so I have high expectations for that.
all in favor? Great. Okay, the other committee that we had tonight was the Long Range Planning Committee, where we had a vacancy that opened up due to a resignation. So we have another slew of really good applications, and I would love to hear from committee members if they have any recommendations.
Yeah, I'll hop in on this one. So there, to me, there was a clear choice. There's great applicant pool. I'm actually new liaison to the committee, so we actually waited for 15 minutes before we had a quorum last week for us to be able to start the meeting. So I do think it's important for us to fill this vacancy.
Yes.
We don't necessarily see eye to eye on everything, but Ken Johnson put in his hat in the ring for this. Former town councilor was actually very instrumental in revising the charge and the makeup of the Long Range Planning Committee a couple of years ago. So he's followed very closely for a number of years with the works of that committee. I think he'd be an interesting candidate to put into the mix there, in that he brings a unique perspective. We don't have any former councilors on the planning committee right now. So I'd like to motion that we appoint Ken Johnson to the full voting member for 2025.
I'll second that. And I thought if we could have maybe a little discussion on that, I was concerned about this one because it replaces Dave Merrill, who is the former chair, number one, and number two, he comes out of, out of the engineering development world, okay, and we're very careful about trying to make sure that we have depth and skill sets in those areas. Ken Johnson, even though he's not an engineer, I think that he has skills that are equivalent to those in terms of his knowledge about development, how focused he's been in that area in the time that he was on the council. He was one of the major authors of one of the first revisions of the growth management ordinance. So he knows the stuff backwards and forwards. He was planning board liaison for a while. So I work with Ken very closely. I think he would add a lot in this committee. And I think the Friday schedule works with his schedule. And if he's still working, he's working Tuesday through Thursday or whatever, but Fridays are good.
Mhm.
So.
Yeah, I think the knowledge of coming as a former counselor could really bring some value to that board. I mean, like you said, just because he doesn't have that specific background, I think just sitting in the seat and being a counselor, you just learn so much and you see so much. And he's the only one listed right here that is not currently involved in anything. And so I think one of our goals is to really try to distribute this and get more people involved. So I don't know if there's any more discussion, if you guys are all in favor. Okay. Okay, so those are the two committees that we have say over. But we do have an independent committee that has representatives from the town of Scarborough that sit on it. So my understanding is the Airport Noise Committee, is that a county committee? It's not just Scarborough, obviously. So let's go with, there must be members from other towns.
There are.
Yes, yep. Okay, and so it looks like the town of Scarborough has a vacancy. And so while technically this is not part of our committee, we are a committee of appointments and we look at applications all the time. So we were given the applications for the Airport Noise Committee. And we're asked to at least give our recommendation to the town council. It's ultimately always up to the town council. So we did receive 2 applications. I don't know if anyone wants to make a recommendation. If you want me to make a recommendation, I can go ahead and, say that one of the applications we received is from Michael Wood. I personally did serve with Michael on the charter review, very knowledgeable. I know he was a former town councilor, I believe, way back in the day. Is that correct? Yep. And if we look at what Mike submitted, it looks like Mike is employed by the FAA. Yeah, so maybe John, do you know a little bit more about Mike?
No, I don't know more about
Okay.
mine. I know about this. So this is carryover. So I think last summer, the longstanding representative from Scarborough resigned. I think his name was Glenn Hall.
Okay,
And we have struggled to find a replacement. So I think not in the too distant past, there was an excerpt put into the town newsletter soliciting applicants, and we got 2 great ones.
Yeah.
And it looks like Michael is a perfect fit
yes, yeah, and
for this.
he's been involved in the past. He isn't right now, so it would be great to get him back involved again, I think. So that would be my recommendation. I don't know, Don, if you have.
Yeah, I support the recommendation. I don't know Mike that well, but I remember when he was a counselor and watched him very closely. He adjudicated in a very fair and effective manner. And the added benefit of him having aviation experience by being an air traffic controller, I can't imagine anybody be better qualified to do that work.
Yeah. Great, so we can, I guess, I don't think we need a vote on it. We can pass that recommendation on.
Yeah.
To John Anderson. Okay. So those are the two committees that we're gonna be discussing tonight. And so item 4, discussion point 2 on our agenda is to discuss the norms for meeting processes and how to proceed. I do think we did already touch around this a little bit in the past. I think we've discussed this maybe at town council a little bit, or at least talked about that. I just had a couple different things that I wanted to note. Specifically, I know that we had discussed doing executive sessions. We discussed that with town council. We think that's going to be so rare. I'd love anyone's feedback. I don't really see us doing those. And I think my personal feeling is if we would, it would probably typically kick up to the town council level.
That's not a bad practice. I don't see it being needed all.
I don't, but I know it's been a concern, so I wanted to address it. I have no intentions of starting to do it. I personally just don't like it. Don't think it should be. I think we can operate in a manner that we hopefully don't have to use them.
I know that came up as a suggestion in an unusual set of circumstances, so, and I'm pleased that we had the opportunity to discuss that in full. And to realize maybe that the best way for us to move forward is to not have that as a standing agenda item. But to rely on it if we have to in the future, but otherwise to rely on our good judgment and use the authority that we have as a self-governing group to, operate within our discretion. And I think we've learned a lot over the past 6 weeks or so. And I think that that there's a way for us to be closer to the work and more workmanlike in how we approach things. And I think there's a way to kind of evaluate candidates and doing it in a way that is not critical. And also to allow room if need be for us to deal with things privately and the auspices of the executive session if need be. But I would hope that would be rare, and I would hope that otherwise we'd be able to operate in a more informal, more kind of discussion-based manner.
I think also this year, we came into the situation where we have more applications than seats, which typically is not the case. I mean, a year ago, I know that they didn't have anyone planning, and that's how I ended up on planning. And so I think we kind of quickly at the end, we're like, let's start having everyone filling out applications. Maybe, next year we can get a little more ahead of it with the vacancies that are coming up. Have people submit applications if it is one of those quasi judicial boards that we feel is more competitive. Maybe we could do an interview process if we feel it's necessary. Don't think we need to figure that out tonight. Just kind of wanted to acknowledge that I think it's sort of shifting. I think seeing the applications that we're getting now, I think they're going to get better. I think we're going to get more, I'm hoping, if people are going to become more engaged. And I want it to be a very transparent, straightforward process that is, that people can understand and realize why we made the decisions we made. That's all I had to say about that. The only other thing that we had on the agenda was it looks like our committee does not have to have hybrid as an offer. We can have just a typical meeting where I think it was the way it was before pre-COVID, where we would just meet. It would not be a Zoom option. I don't know if it would be. I don't even think it has to be recorded. Does it have to be recorded?
I need to go back and look at what.
Yeah, I apologize. Tony sent
Sent
me it, and I think
Charter, I think there's some suggestion that to the degree they could be recorded, the suggestion was they would be. But I'd have to go back and look. I know that was discussion on charter committee as well and rules and policies.
So there may be conflicting, there's 302 that I think delegates the chair of the non-finance, non-ordinance
right,
committee.
yes.
To make that determination. There's another policy that I'm not sure, which is the hybrid meeting policy.
Right.
So I guess short answer
That's a
is,
statute.
I don't know.
That's a state. statute.
well, we had to adopt it as a council and we had all of our committees adopt it, but we didn't have subcommittees of the council adopt it. So I don't.
So there was a point of confusion when all this were, the hybrid meeting policy is intended to allow for remote participation of members under certain circumstances. The recording of proceedings and broadcasting proceedings was something that I think the charter speaks to in reference to the committees that the charter addresses, which is limited to 4, which are 3 judicial and 1 advisory. And then 302 A and 302 is discussed at rules and policies. And I believe, again, there was a suggestion that I think the language that we settled on, this was former Councilor Gleistein's initiative, was essentially whenever possible, the meetings would be recorded for a record. And again, perhaps as a, next time the committee meets, I can get back to the committee members with clarify
Yes.
all those moving pieces. But I do know that there was some confusion around the differentiation between recording proceeding and the hybrid meeting policy, and they were not intended to. There were two separate issues. The only thing that was overlapping was this technology component.
Yeah, outside of what's allowed, I actually don't have an issue with recording the meetings. I think we had a hiccup last year and I think we're past it.
Yeah, I'm of the same view, I think. I think the opportunity to have people join remotely is a good thing. I think we made a commitment a couple of years ago to be more transparent and more participative and be clever and ways to get people more engaged and involved. So I think that reporting is a very, important part of that. And I think there's a way for us to manage that in a careful and sophisticated way. So it is an asset and not a burden. So, no, positive.
So now you say recorded, do you mean recorded and like live and put on
I mean,
YouTube?
live
maybe
streaming
hybrid,
and
Zoom,
recordings,
all the
both.
above? Because I noticed right now, I look at the agenda, we actually don't have public comment. Is there typically not public comment in this committee?
No, we've always allowed it. I mean, it's,
Okay.
we started that on that a couple of years ago. I mean,
Okay.
there's no right to public comment, except for, I think, in a workshop. I think there's a right to public comment in a public hearing, but
Public
not in a
hearing.
public meeting.
And workshops are not required to have.
Right. So I had a long dance with that issue, so I'm gonna get back there, but.
Well, I think I'm more, should we have public comment on our agenda no matter what we're meeting about? Because if we do, then we should 100% be hybrid and we should 100%. But if I think that, like, I didn't
We don't-
know.
We rarely have public comment. I mean, I think.
I really have anybody, is there anybody online now? Oh,
No.
Yeah, it's the exception.
I remember one time where we had public comment and another time where a couple of counselors came in. But other than that, it was
Yeah.
very rare for us to have that at least in my memory, which is not totally reliable.
Yeah, I mean, as chair, you set the agenda, that if you want public comment, as part of the agenda, it's
Yeah.
Or you can
I'm
welcome it if
looking at
somebody
it now,
does
realizing it's
attend.
not on there. I thought that was kind of the norm, to be honest.
I think it is.
Okay, is this to not have public comment on there?
While we have maybe time, can we have just going back to the process question? Because I want to revisit something that we talked about midstream last. Again, it's kind of around the problem that competition for places creates. And Councilor Hamel and I were we were chairing the committee, but there's a question around whether an applicant could make a statement in support of their application.
Yeah.
And that also came about with other municipalities when staffing committees have more of an interview like process. And so those are so I guess that I do think it's, again, I don't think it's going to be common. I mean, how many positions have you staffed for the last 4 years? And we had one instance where someone came and said, I'd like to speak in support of my
Yeah, And
application.
she asked twice and was permitted to speak once, so.
So
E for effort,
so I guess I just offer that up, and not for maybe a decision tonight, but is that something that the committee would consider rolling into their process? We're gonna be considering your application for whatever, you're welcome to speak, or you're invited to speak, or you're permitted to speak on your behalf, should you choose otherwise. I'm just
Yeah.
offering everybody, I don't have a position either way, but it did make for, not clunky, but kind of we had never been posed with that challenge.
Yeah.
before. So I think taking a firm position on whether you're going to allow it, not encourage it, support it, endorse it, whatever.
I'd be curious to see what other big towns are doing. I feel like it might be a little more competitive, maybe in other towns to
Mhm.
get on these committees. I think an interview process if people think it's appropriate, that's fine, but I think let's see, either we're interviewing or we're not. I think I was uncomfortable last month because we're like, hey, if you want to come and talk and support, but I don't think everyone's, like, I know some people who applied for certain positions didn't know that they could come
Mhm.
and speak and support, while other people who were more actively engaged, I think we said, well, come speak and support.
Mhm.
I want to be very consistent and say, if everyone is coming, we're going to interview everyone, or you're given the opportunity. And just be very clear, so everyone's given the same exact.
Right, so I think that's the questions. Do you want to, do you as a
Yeah.
committee, do you want to entertain or not?
Yeah.
And have a consistent position on it.
So it could be, and I'll just popped into my head,
Yeah.
so it's not very well thought out. Let's say we have a situation where we have 6 applicants for 2 openings or 1 opening. And our initial deliberation says, oh geez, you know what? I'd like to know more about these 2 or 3.
Mhm.
Maybe the committee invites those 2 or 3 to come to an interview. I think it's gonna be a rare situation where something like that comes up, but then maybe that's the procedure that you follow, is if you
Mhm.
can't make a decision based on what's in front of you. Or you wanna understand more, then you can, as a committee, say, hey, we wanna on a motion to have these applicants come in for an interview, something along those lines.
So originally when this came up, I was open to the idea, and then we actually let one person do it, and then you figure out, well, wait a minute. How is this being fair to everybody else? And now you set an expectation that if you were serious, you're gonna go speak for yourself. And then what if everybody's supposed to speak for themselves? Some people are better on their feet than others. And so, I think we have more challenges at the moment. We're trying to encourage people to be careful and thorough in completing the application and, really put some time into it. Some folks, just have 1 or 2 statements and assume everybody knows them, or just think that's enough, and other folks, really put the time and energy in. So I don't feel the need for it. It's a nice idea, but is it really something that's gonna create more of a challenge for us to manage than it would be benefit? So,
So are you advocating for the position is that that the committee does not allow for public statements of support, and again, the relationship? I mean, I think if you have a public comment section, I fully expect there may be a prospective applicant or support of an applicant. That's where they likely probably voice their support, but
So if we were gonna have public comment in our meetings, it'd probably be at the beginning,
yeah.
just a side note.
We've had one of these in 3.5 years. Or some,
I agree, it's not a widespread problem. I just think it's an answer that was, if we have had it, we didn't have an answer. I guess my suggestion would be that the committee take a position on that question.
it's not necessary, it's not required. And in fact, we relied primarily on the application. And now the difficulty is among us, among the people who are deliberating, we don't all have equal knowledge and access, to the applicants. So if somebody doesn't know somebody on a committee, that's probably a disadvantage. I don't know how to make all things equal. Some colleges, they accept people without interviews and rely extensively on applications. Not to equate us with colleges, but
PhD.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
I could be persuaded, but
I think it's situational. I think if in a year we're looking at, 20 applications for planning board, we have an obligation to take those, seriously and to show transparency to the 20 applicants, but that's not the situation we're in right now. I generally am just always curious to see how other towns are doing it. I feel like, as we grow, there are other bigger towns with more involvement that maybe they have a better process,
I'd be interested in that as well.
but
Sure.
yeah, we don't need to
learn more.
do too much work. So I don't know if there's any more, about norms, process.
One thing I was gonna mention, when I first started doing this, I actually did a process map for what the steps were for, and not that I'm really proud of my own work, but I figured at some point I could circulate that and see if it's something that it might be worth reinforcing or having a discussion about. But there was nothing special about it, but it did kind of outline some steps that along the way, maybe, we are, not as disciplined as we used to be when we first started. But when I began, I didn't really know what the process was. I put it on paper.
I would appreciate it.
Yeah, have a look at it. So,
I've been appointed to so many boards over the years. I know all the emails and all the processes and all that stuff.
so, you know, for what it's worth, again, it's pretty basic. But it does cover some of the stuff about, you know, connecting with the committees, asking them, making sure that we're talking to the applicants before, you know, and confirming acceptances and, you know, that we make introductions, that kind of thing. It's pretty basic. But that doesn't always happen the same way every time. I think we rely totally for a lot of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you actually brought something up. So tonight, I think this is how I met Don years ago, was when I was chair of the zoning board, he reached out to me, and I think that's a great process. And I know that I reached out to the chairs of the committees of the Conservation Commission, who we didn't discuss tonight, but then also of the Community Services, I talked to that chair. I think that's a good process. They're the ones sitting in the meetings every week. They know exactly maybe what type of person they're looking for. That's not a written thing, but I think that's a norm that I know you were doing that I want to carry on.
That actually was something that I thought was pretty productive because, and it's maybe something that we could distribute as a, you know, we get the whole committee involved so that at least we, you know, we have if you talk to the person about their interest and you have that as a basis of discussion on top of the application, you know, that might be worthwhile. But it's more work. But I found when you call people and talk to them, my bias is I'd much rather do that than emailing. So I spend a lot of time on the phone talking to people, and I learn a lot, and I just get to know people better, and I think people appreciate it. So.
But we probably don't all want to individually be calling the chair of the committee to pick their brain. So if there's a way to kind of,
No, I happen to know our Dylan,
Yeah.
so I reached out to him, and I know the chair of the Conservation Commission, who currently has a vacancy as well. So I think it was just personal. I knew them, so I reached out to them. But I think it's good to touch base with them and kind of see what they're looking for, because certain committees definitely are looking for certain types of people. That we might not know that, you know, we might not know what they're looking for or what they need.
So what I did it primarily as chair of the committee, and I didn't really require my fellow committee members to do that. But sometimes it would break, you know.
how would you share it with the committee? Like
So I would just say.
the knowledge you gained from that.
Yeah, I had a chance to talk to the candidates or.
Well, and I totally failed tonight because I made all the recommendations for community services and failed to say, I'm making these recommendations after speaking to the chair. And I should have said that before, but I did.
So that's why.
Yeah, so, and that's why I think there wasn't a lot of discussion, because
Now you're actually speaking with the chair about the specific applicants, or you're just asking for a broad.
what are
profile,
you
what
looking
skill sets,
for? Like,
interests,
yes,
backgrounds?
yeah, just like kind of what are you missing on the board? Like, you know, with community services, before we were missing, you know, parents, and now we've evened it out, and we're like, you know, we need another parent who has kids, who uses the programs.
Yeah.
We talk about that in the meetings. What are we looking for in? And I know all these committees and boards have those discussions about what type of members. So I think reaching out to them is great practice.
I also remember having conversations, and I won't get specific, where we, instead of just making moves from alternates up to full-blown members, we might do something different. We might have somebody coming from the outside, or have somebody, you know, go over a first alternate to fill a full-blown member. You know, we had the authority to do that. So in cases like that, where, you know, I would make sure that we can have a conversation with the chair and the chair of that committee. And this is what we were thinking, and, you know, are you okay with that? So, but again, this is all sort of in the realm of the art versus science and being overly procedural. But there is an issue of fairness and trying to make sure people have equal access.
Okay.
I think it'll be smooth sailing until the end of the year when we have a
Yeah,
whole
the
batch.
shock load.
Again,
Well, we've learned a lot. We'll be better.
no question.
So discussions on possible agenda items, and then I'm supposed to set an agenda for an unknown meeting on unknown topics. I was not presented with anything specifically beyond, I know we have a couple more vacancies on a couple different boards that I know there's some interest coming on a couple different boards. So we're waiting for some, I think, I don't know if they want, I don't know if we advertise boards. If you want my personal opinion, I think there's a vacancy on conservation and sustainability. I don't know if we could like, I think that's really hot right now. I don't know if we could somehow try to be like, hey, do you want to get involved? Join our committee. Because I know we have a couple of people who are thinking about applying, so I think we're gonna wait to see if we get any more applications, but I didn't know. 'Cause I mean, who doesn't want to volunteer and be on the conservation commission, right? They just don't know about it.
We have, again, really done this, guns pushing over the last few years, which is why I think we've had the competition increase we have. We have really, with Allison's help,
Yeah,
done a lot of promotion on certain newsletters, social media, things like that, trying to advertise vacancies. And so with this recent slate of appointees, we certainly have far fewer polls. And so identifying what those are, we can certainly do another round.
Yeah.
On a modified
Yeah.
basis.
yeah, I was gonna talk to the chairs again, and kind of see, because also I think. Sometimes I think they know people who are already showing up to meetings, but aren't actually on the committees
Sure.
and things like that. So at the moment, I do not have anything for a meeting. I'm not quite sure besides appointments. I have no idea what we would be negotiating. And what sort of stuff comes to this committee.
One thing I was wondering, not that we have to have things, but I know there was some discussion, we had a discussion about comparing what we do in terms of staffing committees with what we relied on the council to do. So for example, when we've done these ad hoc committees, community services, and we did one on the community center, and there was also one on the downtown. You know, and those were
The charter.
and charter. I mean, those are like heavy duty committees, lots of heavy lifting. They followed, I thought they all followed very strict rules and were quite formal in how they operated, particularly the charter.
Yes,
I think Nick McGee was the chair.
he was,
Yeah.
yeah, he did great.
So, but in the past, there was some debate, well, does appointments and negotiations committee do that, or is it something that should be a council effort? And I remember when we did I specifically remember the community center committee. And I seem to recall that was done in an executive session. I could be wrong, but I remember we did that for a specific reason, because we wanted to make sure that we had the right talent, nice representation across the town. And that we didn't really, it's not that we didn't think the appointments committee could do it. We just thought it deserved the attention of the full council and discussion in private about it. What are we looking for? What should the next be? So I think that's something worth formalizing. I don't believe we've done anything in terms of rules around that and how to staff ad hoc committees.
No, it's the discretion of the council. So as the council would need to, start deliberating on creating an ad hoc committee. And could delegate that, some of the work to the appointments committee to maybe define the charge or to staff it even. There's no right or wrong answer. I think with the downtown committee, the community center committee, and the charter committee, those were, I think the ANC may have had a part in writing some of the charge or reviewing some of it.
We did some of the work, but it was.
But the appointments were done in an executive session.
Right, we wanted to certain. And I think it was also sort of that it had a different type of status than other committees. I mean,
It's not a standing committee.
right, and there was like heavy lifting for an intense period of time, and each one of those committees, if you look at the quality of the work product they did, and there's still reliant stuff that they did several years ago. I mean, it's really, and the charter work was all really very well done. I mean, I was astounded, I was really pleasantly surprised by that. So there's something there that I think we need to codify, and whether it doesn't require anything other than having, a good council and, relying on the town manager and assistant town manager to help us facilitate it. But back in those, I felt, very proud about being able to do those and the work that came out of it. And it was a council back, not any one person.
Agree.
Just to go back to the negotiations component of the committee. That was originally added by former Councilor Babine for this committee to take on negotiation of the town manager's contract.
Mhm.
It's up, and it's actually up at the end of this year.
Okay.
So that will fall to this committee. Timeline's coming right up. I believe June is an important date around notifying, the parties need to notify each other of mutual interest. Again, it's not how it's working, but that's essentially what happens by
Yep.
June. And then we've also, and, look closely when our collective bargaining agreements were up and being negotiated, we had this serve as the liaison committee to the council to vet to a far more specific degree what the components of those agreements were. We kept this committee apprised of how those discussions were going. Our 4 contracts aren't up until, thankfully, until next year.
Mhm.
So that won't likely be a component of that. There's, for the most part, that won't be a component of
Yep.
this committee this year, but certainly town manager's contract will be in charge of this committee to have some discussions in executive session about that process.
So the thing to think about is that I don't think we've even formalized that process. I think you and I have done it with the support of the council. Or was it actually a council charge that you used?
The negotiations as it pertains to the town manager's contract, that's something that even predates me.
Yeah.
And so if it hasn't been incorporated in the charge, it's certainly a well accepted practice and charge of the
I
committee.
think that's why they added the negotiations.
Yeah,
to the
Yeah, I recall Sean Babine was the guy that did that.
Right.
But the only thing I'd say is that in the, likely event that we have people doing this someday, hopefully, there might be something worthwhile learning that so others could follow. I mean, you can always amend it or choose to do it differently, but there's some things like that that we fun for us to capture and try to formalize so we don't lose it.
So you're talking Jean Marie's world.
Yeah.
Uh,
A lot of this stuff is.
Rules and
Well, it was
policy.
legacy,
Yeah.
right.
But worth, definitely worth discussing.
I'm on
Yeah.
rules and policy.
And I think I also kind of looked at the stuff, think of what we did with revisions to the long range planning committee. That piece of work was really pretty amazing because it was done, I think, by Betsy Gleistein and John Anderson.
Yeah.
And we swooped in, changed that, and we did it in 45 days. I mean, it was, and it's stuck, it really. And that had to do with balancing the composition of the committee. We wanted to have some at-large members from the general public, and that's, I think, really worked well.
That's one of those things where it kind of, there's a coordination that needs to happen between, with feedback from the appointments negotiations committee to the rules and policy committee that was actually charged with enacting changes to 302 and 302A. It's not dissimilar from, finance committee weighing in on something that maybe falls to ordinance, right?
Yeah, when I said Jean Marie, so anybody can bring an ordinance amendment forward.
Yeah.
And we just have to build support with the council.
Yeah.
So if you have an idea, but I mean, some of them make logical sense to handle through rules and policy, but something you can handle it as a council as well.
Yeah.
You just need support.
So I would say at the moment, we do not have a meeting or anything for an agenda. Is that correct? We
next meeting?
have a standing meeting, which is every second Wednesday at 6:30. But if we do not have any agenda items, we will not be meeting.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
yeah.
if you'll make that call maybe a week before,
I would imagine,
Somewhere.
as soon as something comes up.
if you don't have enough applicants, or you don't have anything
Yeah, I
to
mean,
convene
in
us on.
6 months, we skipped at least 2, maybe 3 appointments, maybe, since we had nothing to staff and no applications. So I'd say, we still have vacancies, but if there's no applications,
Right.
everyone's got other things to do with their time.
Mhm.
Unless we just want to play bridge.
Love to.
Yeah,
Thanks for
let's do it.
the great invitation.
Any crickets?
To the second,
Create a new board.
the second Wednesday of next month. February.
So I guess all I would say is the public is just watch the town agenda, the
We
town
actually have-
calendar and see if we have a meeting.
Yeah, it'll be on the calendar until we tag it as, or you tag it as canceled. Okay.
Do we have anything else? A motion to adjourn.